Okay, let's get started. Welcome to the Power Hour. This is a monthly interview series featuring leaders from the front lines of the fight for gender justice. I'm Dr. Caroline Heldman, the Executive Director of the Representation Project and the Chair of the Critical Theory and Social Justice Department at Occidental College. And I am thrilled to be joined today by my co-host, Sydney Corey. Sydney is a film professional with experience working at organizations including the REP Project, Film Independent, and A24. Sydney is currently working in documentary development at Concordia Studios. Sydney, I'm going to pass the baton to you. Take it away.
Hi, everyone. So the Power Hour, if you don't know, is a monthly interview series that features extraordinary influential change makers. And the purpose of the series is to bring the wisdom of activists and thought leaders to inspire you to take action. So today we are joined by Serita Fontanesi. Thank you so much for joining. I'm just going to read off her bio so you guys can get a sense of who she is. So Serita is the founding executive director of Emerge Texas, working to get Democratic women and femmes elected into office at every level. She received her master's in social work from the University of Southern California, go Trojans, and her bachelor's in costume design from Occidental College. Serita is committed to the liberation of Black women and femmes through dismantling systems of oppression and disrupting cycles of harm through transformative healing and leadership. Snaps to that. So please, Serita, tell us more about your work, the work that you do with Emerge Texas, and why is it important to have more women in politics? And how is your organization making this happen?
Yeah, absolutely. First, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here and talk a little bit about Emerge and our work and all the things that are going on all the time. Like you said, Emerge, we recruit, train, and empower Democratic, self-identified women and femmes to run for office and win. One of the things that's really important to me about the work that we do at Emerge is that winning has a broad definition, right? Especially in Democratic politics in Texas, wins can look different. It is a marathon, not a sprint, is what I often remind folks. And so we really want to make sure that we are supporting our alumni, supporting the candidates that we work with to be able to run strong, equitable, representative campaigns that at the very least are pushing the needle and forcing conversations and obviously getting folks elected and into office. We actually had 3 women on the ballot on Tuesday, on November 2nd, 2 incumbents, 1 first-time candidate, all women of color, all running for various judicial seats around the state. And I'm very excited that, we are doing this work already in our first year. These down ballot races, we are still waiting on results because Texas is a big state. But so we are eagerly awaiting and hoping for nothing but success for our alumni. And looking at 2022, I feel like I am in the future, in the past, in the present at all times.
And how did you do with your 3 candidates, Serita?
Yeah, so polls are looking good. We don't have final results in yet because these down ballot seats take a long time to count because there are so many people in this state. Fun fact. I think someone said the other day that Vermont is about the size of Harris County, which is where Houston is. So we have 254 counties. Millions of folks and lots going on.
Okay, so we have fingers and toes crossed for your candidates. Amazing. Talk to us about some of the challenges that you face in your work. You hinted at being, Emerge Texas and how winning doesn't necessarily just mean winning elections. What are some of the challenges you face doing activism in Texas or activism around issues pertaining to women?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I always, when I'm talking to folks and kind of explaining this work, I always look at it in layers, right? So we have Texas, this big state, historically Republican, and Texas is not a Republican state. It is a voter suppressed state. It is a gerrymandered state. It is a marginalized state, right? But so there are a lot of forces and systems working against progressive movements already. Like that's the background. So choosing to run as a Democrat, even as a moderate Democrat, can pose challenges and really require some thick skin and really require some serious passion and commitment for the work, because running for office isn't easy in general. But then, like I said, right, we've added on Democrat, then we add on whether you identify as a woman, as a femme, non-binary, if you're a queer person, if you are a person of color, a person with a disability, right? Like all of the different intersections that we live at that our society has really been conditioned to discount and discredit. And I'm a firm believer, whenever I'm talking to someone who's like, I'm thinking about running for office, but I don't know if I'm qualified. I don't know if I'm ready. Like the first thing I always ask is, do you care about your community and do you want to do some good? And if the answer to both of those questions is yes, you're qualified. You are like,
Can
you
say that
are
again, Serita, for those in the-
qualified. Absolutely. Like if you actually are committed to serving your community and bettering the lives of the people around you, the people in your state, whatever the level may be, then you are absolutely qualified to run for office. It's one of those things where I often say, because we focused on training and getting people kind of those tangible skills of, okay, this is how you put together a field plan and fundraising, and this is how you can deal with messaging, that type of stuff. And like, yeah, I can teach you tactics and strategy and all of that, but I can't make you care. And if you don't care, voters are gonna catch on pretty quickly. And it's only gonna make life more difficult for you and everyone else. So if you care, if you're passionate, if you're committed and dedicated, great, we can work on the other stuff.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm curious, has the media helped or hurt, I would say, some of these causes? Has it been a tool to empower women, or has it been used in a negative way, would you say?
I'm going to say the super annoying thing of both. So for example, September 1 was when SB 8, the anti-abortion bill, banning abortions in any case after 6 weeks here in Texas, when that officially went into effect, there was a mass digital movement that really happened around connecting activists and providers and folks on the ground to resources to each other. We really, you saw a lot of people just like, hey, I know this is really hard. I know we're all going through a lot. Like, you're not alone. You're not the only one. Like, don't give up on this fight. Like, so really creating community and providing network, like mutual aid funds popped up, and anyone from anywhere, right, can donate and support a person's access to healthcare. Ultimately, that's what abortion is healthcare. So really helping in that space and helping give platform and power and voice to folks who are experiencing it, who have the lived experience, who are in the work. I think it's Cori Bush who said, the people who are closest to the pain need to be closest to the power. And the media can really help, social media in particular, can really help with telling these stories. Like, actually, I was in a meeting earlier today and someone was talking about how their mother had passed in the last few years and she had had an abortion. And the abortion was what allowed her and her husband to immigrate to America and create the life that they created for their family. And so he wrote the story and he sent it to Miss Magazine and was like, hey, is this something that is this a story that you'd be interested in? And they were like, yeah, absolutely. Like, this is an incredible story. Like, we love it. Like, we want to publish it. Can you send us a picture of your mom so we can include it? And he was like, yeah, absolutely. And in the process of finding a picture of his mom to share, he learned that Miss Magazine was actually one of his mom's favorite magazines. And now she's like on the cover of an issue of Miss. And like, that's incredible. And that all really came about through the power of media and connection. I think the other side of that coin, right? Like the double-edged sword is it's really easy to forget that there's a human on the other side. And unfortunately, people in the anti-abortion space, not all, but a lot of folks, really, as much as they say like they're fighting for life and they want to like protect life, like they really mistreat some folks who absolutely are here and alive and just trying to make the decision that makes the most sense for them. There's a documentary that came out recently on HBO, 15 Minutes of Shame. Monica Lewinsky is the producer and the narrator, and it really looks at like the way that the internet can also allow us to just gang up on folks and create our own narratives and say our own things. So it's a double-edged sword.
For sure. Going back in time a little bit, can you please tell us a little bit more about your path? How did you choose nonprofit work as your avenue to pursuing social justice?
Yeah. How much time do we have? It's a little bit of a winding road. So like you said, I have my undergrad in costume design from Occidental. Hey, Oxy, go Tigers, go Triumphy. Did I get it all? I'm originally from Houston and lived here until I was about 11, moved to New Mexico, went to Los Angeles for school. And then I worked in film and TV for a while doing, I was a seamstress mostly, but also doing some like wardrobe and styling. And it's not a super sustainable industry. Burnout is very easy. And found myself starting to resent this thing that I had really loved for so long, which, you know, it wouldn't be until years later where I learned about how you don't have to monetize your hobbies. Like that's a scam of capitalism, but I hadn't gotten there yet. And so was sort of at this moment of like, okay, so what do I do now? I'm like in my early 20s, nannying, already burnt out of my career and like trying to figure out what's next. So I have always been interested and cared about creating equity, particularly in like the art spaces and like creative spaces, because creative expression has always been such a big part of my life. And it's a shame that not everyone can have access to it. So started working in like an arts nonprofit and really getting into like the development and fundraising and like community organizing space. Started from there, I started working in an organization called My Friend's Place in Hollywood. They provide services for youth experiencing homelessness and really help create safe space and stability. And so in that role, I fully had like gotten into the nonprofit world and was doing like community events and a lot of education around how youth homelessness happens. Homelessness in general, but especially with youth, like people really struggle with understanding how it's a failure of systems, not a failure of the person. And so breaking that down, having those conversations, and then getting people engaged and excited about the work that we did. I was like, oh, like this, oh, okay, like I might be good at this. Like, all right, this is fun. And so that was when I decided to get my master's in macro social work at USC. I did my field placement with an organization in Skid Row in downtown Los Angeles, really focused on the intersection of community organizing, coalition building, and policy. So helping train people on how to submit public comment at a city council meeting, helping to connect service providers and our unhoused neighbors and other community leaders in one space so that people can actually hear from, again, the people closest to the pain. And really loved the community aspect of it, really struggled with the policy part, which I thought I was going to be like a policy person. I was like, I'm going to like write all of this incredible policy and fix things. And ultimately what it came down to is I realized that you can write incredible policy, but if you don't have people in the room that are willing to fight for it and advocate for it and push for it, it's just going to be a great piece of paper. And so that's when I decided to transition into electoral politics. My husband and I moved to Texas. I came back to Texas. We moved to Austin on March 1st of 2020. We both had taken jobs here. And then 2 weeks later, everything shut down, but here we are making it. I worked for the Texas Democratic Party as the Black constituency organizer, working with community-based organizations, elected officials, and candidates to mobilize the Black vote here in Texas. Took some time off after the election to sleep and become a person again, and then stepped into my role here at Emerge now.
That's an amazing path, Serita, and some questions that dovetail with that. The great Violet Applesmith has asked a question. In one of my classes right now, we've been talking about the gender gap in ambition when it comes to women running for office. So Jennifer Wallace's work probably. What efforts is your organization making in order to increase ambition amongst women? And I'll add on to that. So talking about increasing ambition, what does it look like when women go through your program? Like, what is the first thing you tell them?
Yeah, I love this. So absolutely. We say on average, it takes a woman about 7 times to be asked to run for office before she'll do it. I don't know if any man in politics has ever thought about something 7 times before doing it. And it comes from, the thing that I hear the most is it comes from this place, like I was talking about earlier, of am I qualified? Am I the right one? Could it be me? And I often tell folks in recruitment or in training of like, look, have the ambition of a mediocre white man. Like have the faith and the trust in yourself of the dog's broken. Have the faith and the trust in yourself that you are capable. Like we focus so much on like, what if I can't, what if I'm wrong, what if this, what if that we never give ourselves time to imagine, what if I could, what if I did, what if I do? So that's the first part of the conversation. It's starting to like think about that like thought shift. It's a little bit of the social worker coming out. And so then from there, in terms of like training and tangible skills, the very first day of our trainings is dedicated to exploring and digging deeper into why you're doing this and how to craft a narrative around that, as well as social justice and equity training and how to responsibly weave equity into every single piece of your campaign. Because again, it is hard enough to run for office. It is even harder when you are living at marginalized intersections. And a big piece of that is because you don't see yourself. It's hard to imagine something that you've never seen before. And so regardless of who our alumni are, we always want to make sure that every single person who comes through an Emerge training, win or lose, is bettering the political world. So that's day one. Hi, hello, it's nice to meet you. Let's dig in deep. But what we've seen is that it really, it helps it actually stay top of mind, because now it's not this thing that we tacked on at the end and maybe had like 30 minutes for. It's something that can be repeated and brought up in every other aspect of training. And 2, that's true for both the why and for the equity piece. And then 2, it really forces this sort of come to Jesus moment of what, am I allowed to cuss?
Yes, I think so.
I was like, it's like, why the fuck are you doing this? Like, what are you really in this for? And if you can't come up with a good message, I can't teach you anything that will make you a better candidate. Like if you, like we can talk about, I shouldn't say message, but like why? Like we can talk about finessing and spin and storytelling and crafting, but if you don't have a firm, like this is why I do this, you will get eaten alive. And honestly, who wants that? Like you might as well get out now. But then again, going back to kind of like the tangible stuff of a training, we have 2 different offerings. So there's our candidate boot camps, which we actually will have one at the end of January. And those are for folks that are currently in office. So it'll be for the 2022 cycle. It's about 22 hours of content that we spread over a few days. And it's meant to like basically bring your real world problems so that we can figure them out in this collaborative setting with leaders in each specific field. Of messaging, fundraising, outreach, GOTV, all of the different aspects. Like how can we make it that much better? That's really what the boot camp is focused on. And then we have our signature training, which this one will launch in April, and it's about 6 months long. We meet once a month, and it's for folks that are planning to run the one launching next year. So folks planning to run in 2023, 2024 and beyond. So often it's people who are like, okay, I want to do this. Maybe I've even started doing some research on what to do, but I've never run a campaign. I've never been a candidate before. I've never run for office at this level before. Secretary Deb Haaland is an Emerge New Mexico alumni. So, and she started with Emerge before she even got to Congress. And so when we think about the women and folks that come through our training, I don't just see someone who is just maybe kind of thinking they might want to run for a thing. Like I really look at and think about and talk to folks as in like, how do you want to change the world? What's the mark that you want to leave, right? Everyone doesn't have to go become Deb Haaland. If we could, we would. But are you prepared to be invested to make a meaningful impact in your community and to do the personal work and with these like professional supports and tools to really dig deep and stop limiting yourself?
Just a quick tack on to that. I met Deb Haaland at a wedding a few years ago, and before she was running for public office, or she had decided that she was going to run, and she was telling me all about it. I'm like, okay, I'm going to work on your campaign. And, all of these people at the table were so excited because she told her story and she hadn't run yet. And I didn't doubt it for a moment because she had it down. She knew why she was doing it. Of course, I mean, now she's a secretary of the United States of America. Amazing, right? From saying you're going to run for office, for winning a congressional seat, and then getting appointed at the federal level. It's just incredible.
Yeah, and it's really, again, it's a testament to like what is possible when you, one, believe in yourself, and two, have a network behind you that will lift you up in the moments that you don't.
I think that's a perfect segue into another question that was sent in. So obviously you just mentioned that it's important to have a network behind you. One anonymous attendee wants to know, is there a fundraising gap between women and men candidates?
Absolutely. There's a pay gap, there's a fundraising gap. Where do I begin? Yeah, so unfortunately there is. And one of the challenging things about running for office in a state like Texas is it's huge. If you are running for a statewide seat, there's a good chance that you're going to need to raise upwards of $7-8 million to actually be competitive. And that's not easy. Even if you are running for a state house seat, you can expect to spend between $1 and $2 million because the districts are so big, because we have no spending limits. It's the Wild West out here. And just the media markets are expensive. Like there's big cost attached to running for office in a state like Texas. And then, yeah, so these fundraising gaps, often what we see is that men have an easier time getting that starter money, getting the money to launch, getting the money to be able to say, I'm going to run for office in a big, splashy, sometimes impressive, sometimes overcompensating way. And often for women, that is much harder to do because everything comes with strings and proving yourself a lot of the times. There tends to be a lot more questioning of, well, why you, why this, why now? What are you going to do about this? What are you going to do about that? That people don't necessarily ask of male folks, male-bodied folks. And so, but then the flip side of that is for better or for worse, a woman, a non-binary person, a trans person, a person of color is still a novelty in a lot of places and spaces, which is absolutely a problem. And like Emerge, our national organization, and all of the affiliates have launched an initiative called the New American Majority, where we're really focusing on people of color, gender queer, gender expansive folks, LGBTQ folks, unmarried folks from different, just people who are reflective of the world that we live in. It's a wild idea. But so there tends to be a harder time kind of getting that initial start, but with good storytelling, with good outreach, with good messaging and networking, eventually folks are able to get over that hill and get over that bump. And part of our trainings is like, we do a fundraising with the signature, we do a fundraising weekend in the boot camp. It's an afternoon where we have some of our trainers who are professional fundraisers. All they do all year round is get money. And that's incredible. Like, that is fully a skill. And so we have them come in to lead training, and then we do call time in training. Like, we work through our call time scripts. We work through Rolodexing our list from just our Facebook group, like, or not even Facebook group, from our like Facebook friends or from our Twitter followers. And we like walk through that process because, one, we want to demystify it. And two, we want to remind our candidates and remind our alumni of how good they already are.
Sarita, along those lines, given what you know about the structural obstacles to winning elections in Texas, why continue to work within the electoral system? Why not work from outside? And maybe a broader, 30,000 foot view would be the question of the role of outside pressure and inside electoral politics and how those work together.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the short answer is because why not? Like, but really it's like, for me, I see the options as I can either be actively involved in who is running for office, or I can be actively involved in sort of who is like holding accountable the people who are in office. And there's absolutely a place for both of those. I want to be very clear. But for me, I kind of gotten to a point where I'm sort of like, I don't really feel like telling a bunch of people, a bunch of grown adults what to do, because they clearly already know what they want to do. And so like, I'm tired of that specific fight, me personally. And I find it much more interesting and much more exciting to be able to do this like cultivation of an envisioning of like what's possible, what could be, and how can we like put in the scaffolding to make it happen. Politics has a long way to go. But also it's that thing of like, the only way that the culture of the political culture and the political sphere changes is if different people start working within it. Mm. And then, sorry, what was the second part?
About the role, well, you actually already answered it.
Okay, great.
It's that you need both, right?
Yeah, you do. You need both. Like, everybody loves the like Obama, like, don't boo, vote. And it's like, actually, you can do both. There's room for both. And quite honestly, you need the catalyst of the booing, of the protesting, of the big display of pain and grief and sorrow to motivate folks to go vote. Like, it's a yes, and don't limit yourself.
So we actually have a question from Becca. What or who do you watch, read, listen to in order to keep a pulse on what's happening in the world of politics? Do you have any social media accounts that, we should be following or listening to?
Yeah, oh, that's a good one. I am definitely an NPR person. I can admit that. Um, I mean, I follow a lot of like local activists and organizers that either I've worked with or come across here in Texas. I think in terms of like organizations or sort of like media outlets, the Texas Signal, they are a supporter of Emerge, but I was a fan before. They are, I think, the only for-profit news source here in Texas. So one thing that a lot of folks don't realize is a lot of the newspapers are 501c3s. They're nonprofits because that makes the most sense for them. This isn't a tax class. But what that means is, as a nonprofit, they technically are not allowed, this is true of all nonprofits, technically are not allowed to take a political stance on anything. Nonprofits are supposed to remain neutral. They can give information. They can, everybody flirts with the fine line of, was this a direct call or was this just a very specific presentation of information? But they aren't necessarily, they're not allowed to be like a Democratic publication or a Republican publication. Again, they absolutely have a bend, but those are the rules that the container they're kind of working in. Texas Signal specifically started as not a nonprofit because they didn't want to have to do that. Like, they wanted to be able to follow the legislature, follow our leaders here in Texas, and specifically call out bad behavior with no repercussions, basically, in terms of like the threat of their business. And one, I love it. Two, I really respect David. He's the owner of Texas Signal, David Lee, in that he saw a gap in the media market here in Texas and said, how do we fix it? And part of the Signal is also David has really worked to create like paid internships and fellowships and like opportunities for young media strategists, for young writers, for young folks who, especially folks of color, folks from underserved communities, to get involved in the space. And it shows in the writing because there's nuance, there's intersectionality, there's multiple paths to various stances that are actually helpful and not just contrarian.
Serita, not shifting gears much, but asking about coalitions now, right? You are part of a coalition that is working to support women candidates. Can you tell us a bit about how that coalition, how there's not maybe necessarily one, you've got your coalition in Texas, you've got a national coalition. Tell us about who is working on this and how you work with them.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the main folks that we work with specifically here in Texas, there's an organization called Annie's List. They've been around for decades at this point, and they are focused on getting women candidates elected from the county level and up. They have a nonprofit and a C4, so they are able to endorse and give money to campaigns. And so we are, wow, I didn't realize I was going to talk about taxes so much. We are what's called a 527. So it is a political organization focused on training specifically. It's kind of the in-between of a C3 that has to stay non-political and a C4, which is like a PAC that is overtly political. We're sort of the in-between. The reason why I say that is because we don't endorse and we don't give financially to, my dog really needed water right now. We do not give financially to candidates. So what we get to do is recruit and train and then like pass the baton. And we have a really great working relationship with them. We involve them in our trainings. We go to their trainings so that we are creating a pipeline of eligible, viable candidates. one of the things, also talking about why I stay in this side of politics, because I'm sick of hearing there's no one to run. It's not that there's no one to run. There's no one that you think could win. There's no one that has been given the support or the tools to run. Like, there's someone to run, I guarantee you. And then working with our state Democratic Party, working with some of our national partners like Higher Heights and Emily's List. With all of our alumni, we provide continued education. We Emerge America recently entered a partnership with Weed Maps to talk about cannabis legislation with our alumni. So working with partners in that way to really, again, create this is kind of the social work piece, like this wraparound network and care for all of our alumni, so that there is a network, there is a safety net. And if Emerge Texas doesn't have what you need, we can go to someone who does.
We have a very interesting question in that kind of piggybacks off that a little bit. So what does a successful strategy look like in Texas or broadly with the increased polarization between moderate and liberal candidates?
Yeah, oh, I love that question. Because I actually had a conversation about this earlier today, and a little bit of a radical thought, but if people are turned off from our party because we have the audacity to require that people be included, that people be safe, that people have their needs met, I don't know that there was ever really a space for you in the party. We just tolerated it. There's that. That's me. That's my vibe. Looking at a state like Texas, where there is kind of a very wide swath of how we define Democrat, and then even a wider spectrum from, very progressive folks on the left and extremists on the right. I always tell candidates, you have to connect the dots for people, because the majority of the folks in the electorate are regular people living regular lives, right? They're not in the political echo chamber of those of us that are like living, breathing this stuff all the time and maybe get things faster because we know how these systems work. And the example that I've been using a lot lately is around climate change, and that obviously Texas is very into oil. We are also technically a right to work state, which is inherently anti-labor, anti-union, but we do have a very big labor and union movement and base here in Texas. The labor unions do a ton of incredible work, and are some of our partners with Emerge as well. And so, but when I say connecting the dots, oil is a finite resource, which we all know. Getting into renewable energy is very long-term thinking. It is securing jobs for generations. And if we work within our labor movement and our unions, then you can be paid to be taught and trained how to work within the renewable energy space. And now you're a skilled employee, which means that you're going to have an increased salary, increased benefits, increased access to protections and safety and all of that. And now you're working in a field that isn't actively exploiting you because it just sees you as a cog in a machine. And like, that's a lot, right? Like that's a long walk. And I think, but like, it's such an important conversation, because now someone who ultimately is a parent, is a provider, is a caretaker, whatever, is just trying to keep the lights on and put food on the table, is no longer hearing, well, the liberals are going to come take your jobs because they don't like oil. Now they're hearing, oh, I do break my back every day at this and nobody cares. And there's a possibility, again, a possibility for something else, for something more, for something different and I'm included in it. I'm hearing that I'm included in it. And so I think that is part of the solution for kind of bridging the gap in the political polarization in terms of left and right. And then I think that long walk is also how we move from moderate to more progressive.
I'm going to really shift gears here.
Let's do it. I'm excited.
So you are running a nonprofit. You have all the degrees. You have years of experience. You're a professional person. You're an effective person. You are a person of power. On your bio, you talk about being a trauma-informed yoga instructor, a doula. If folks follow you on social media, they know you're a practicing witch. I want you to talk about what it means, and this is a trend for millennials, right? And a trend that millennials started to bring more authentic selves into the workspace, and maybe that's a function of social media. I don't know the origins of that, but the question is, like, what are your thoughts on on professionalism, and how do you balance being an authentic person with these maybe older notions or outdated notions of professionalism?
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked. One, professionalism is a scam. It is a tool of white supremacy, and it is meant to control and modify and force very specific ideas and ideologies onto an entire universe of people. So it is inherently flawed. I think when people say professionalism, what they are actually wanting is respect. They want to be heard. They want their boundaries validated. They want to be treated like a person, right? And so you can absolutely hold all of those things and be authentic and honest and true. It's really hard to be professional and your authentic self. And I have spent a lot of time trying to be very professional, and often to my own detriment. And, lots of therapy and podcasts and long rants later, really had to have this conversation of myself of like, do I care more about the comfort and sensibilities of others, or do I care more about honoring myself? And ultimately, I love myself, and I'm not willing anymore. Again, this took work, this took time, a process, but I'm not willing anymore to sacrifice who I am for the sake of others. And do I walk into every meeting in every space and lead with, here are all of the 12,000 things about me? No, like I can use discernment and recognize audience, recognize time and place and space for various things. But ultimately, like, I am still myself in every space. I might only reveal certain parts, or I might lean more on certain parts, but I am still all of those things in every space. And I think, not to get too philosophical, but if we spent more time figuring out how to be honest and authentic, and less time around how to be presentable or palatable, like, we might get more things done just in general. Like, being palatable is, like, honestly kind of boring, one, and two, it's always self-sacrificing. And at a certain point, if you keep sacrificing yourself, you either burn out and don't exist anymore and have to get out, or you become resentful and mean, and neither of those things sound fun. So maybe let's try something different.
Thank you.
Well, you said you didn't want to get philosophical, but that's always my favorite. So, but one last question, actually. So this is a question we ask everyone who is on the Power Hour. If you had a magic wand, what would you change about the world of social justice?
Whew. Okay. Wow, that's a big one. I think, especially thinking about the work that I do in the space that I'm in, if I had a magic wand, I'll give like a practical and like an internal. I'll give you two. I think from a practical standpoint, I would just really clear out a lot of the like establishment mentality of, oh, but this is how we have to do it because this is how I did and I paid my dues and now you have to pay yours. It's like, just because you were miserable, why do we all have to be miserable? Wouldn't you want to make it not miserable? I don't understand. So there's that. And then two, I think from like a personal, like internal work, I would love to be able to wave a magic wand and at the very least allow people to think about themselves in a way that is supportive and full of possibilities rather than limitations.
That's a fantastic note to end on. Serita, where can everyone find you on social?
Absolutely. You can find me on all platforms. I'm on TikTok now. It's very weird. I'm getting used to it. At Serita Fonta, SERITAFONTA. My website's on there. My podcast is on there. If you want to hear more about politics and astrology and pop culture in the chaos with my friend Cal and Serita, that's on there. And you can learn more about Emerge and our work at tx.emergeamerica.org. Applications are open for our 2022 programs. Please reach out. I'm available. Email me, DM me. I am out in these digital streets.
Thank you so much, Serita. That was a fantastic conversation. Everyone, we'll see you in a month. Yay! Bye. Have a great weekend.